Growing up, the tight-knit religious Jeffley family didn't have much, but they had each other.
What was life like for you before?
I had a good life. I had 2 older sisters, my 2 older brothers. As a single parent, my mom always struggled, but she provided.
Those struggles became even more challenging when tragedy struck not once, but twice. Within 2 years, 2 deaths. First, the eldest boy was shot to death on a summer break home from college. Then, a year later, the youngest fell ill and died.
A lot of sadness, a lot of loss, grief.
So you lose a son one year to violence, and then you lose a son to cancer the next year.
Yes. Yes. Losing 2 boys, 2 sons, 2 children, it wasn't easy.
What the Jeffleys didn't know is they're about to lose another one of their own. It is late October at the Green Arbor Apartments in Houston, Texas. The Jeffleys are new to the city and newer to the complex, moving in only 3 months prior. 15-year-old Jennifer is in the 8th grade. She'd been held back for missing school, mostly for staying home to care for her ailing brother. On this night, she is staying over at a friend's who also lives in the complex.
Who is Eva Mondragon?
She was the friend whose apartment I had stayed at the night before the incident.
Also with her that night at Eva's were 2 other friends, Kenneth Driver and his brother Pharrell Smith. The next morning, Jennifer gets a page from family friend Craig Peters. Eva's phone wasn't working, so Jennifer goes to another neighbor's house to call him.
Went to the apartment that was in the very front, apartment number 3, to Janet Dorsey. I talked to her for a little while. I waited maybe 30 minutes for Craig Peters to call me back.
I talked to her that morning. We were just talking normal. She wasn't agitated, or nothing.
After they hang up,
I stayed, talked to Janet Dorsey for a little while longer. Then I returned back to Eva's apartment, and then that's when it all unraveled.
back at the apartment, the first thing Jennifer sees is Eva outside, looking over the fence of her downstairs neighbor, Maria Palomino.
When I came back, she was standing on the stairs looking over Miss Palomino's balcony. I went upstairs looking for a friend and his brother. When I came back down, that's when she got hysterical. Oh my God, I gotta go get help. There's a woman dead in the apartment.
What did you see? Take us through that.
I peered over the balcony. There, the sliding door of the patio was off track and it was an overturned house shoe in the doorway. That's all I could see. I didn't see anything else that indicated it was a woman dead in the apartment.
Then what happened?
Then Eva came back with the two apartment managers and the maintenance man. And the maintenance man first tried knocking on the door. No response. He jumped over the balcony, opened the front door. We were able to get a clear view of her. She was laying in the doorway. Her head was facing the living room. Her feet were facing the doorway. Broken pottery around her. I didn't see blood, but she was immobile. I couldn't tell if she was breathing or not. She wasn't making any sound.
So you didn't check to see if she was alive or move any of the broken pottery?
No.
Then what happened?
They shooed us off, and we went upstairs.
Back upstairs, Jennifer says Eva does something strange. She gives her instructions on what to say to cops who will arrive momentarily. Eva allegedly tells Jennifer,
"You tell the police that we were all together. It's important that you tell them that we were together. Don't give any additional information if they ask you." I didn't think anything of it, so I'm like, okay, but it was happening so fast, I didn't have time to question it.
Why did Eva want you to say you were with her?
She said our lives was in danger if we didn't say that we were together.
How so?
She never elaborated. She just gave me basics of what she wanted me to tell the police. I'm under the assumption that we were all making the same statement.
How old was Eva Mondragon?
She was 24.
And you were 15?
Yes, ma'am.
So you were listening to Eva doing what she told you to do?
Yes, ma'am.
when the Houston PD arrives, they see 71-year-old Maria Palomino had been viciously murdered. The medical examiner would later determine she died from multiple sharp force injuries associated with blunt force trauma to the head. She also had been stabbed multiple times. In the apartment, cops find broken pottery around the victim, an open kitchen drawer covered with plastic, 2 purses which had been rifled through, and blood in multiple locations. Cops talk to the apartment staff and residents. Eva tells police she and the boys were awakened by screams coming from Palomino's apartment. They ran outside, and while they stood on the stairs, Eva yelled down to see if Mrs. Palomino was okay. A voice answered back, "I'm okay, I just fell and hit my head." She then ran for help. Next, it's Jennifer's turn. Did the story Eva allegedly told her to say seem to implicate her more? She tells cops.
Then we were awakened by the screams of the victim, screaming for help. I said that I had jumped over the balcony with the maintenance man.
But you didn't.
No, I didn't,
And you said this why?
because Eva instructed me to.
You told police you were with Eva Mondragon when the murder happened, but you really weren't?
No, ma'am. I was in a whole nother location.
Remember, Jennifer said she was at her neighbor's, calling family friend Craig Peters.
I did say that I went through 2 purses looking for a pen, that I opened the drawer looking for a paper,
And why did you say you had been in that apartment?
because Eva instructed me to tell them that I had been in the apartment so I would be able to give police a clear picture of what I had saw.
And you just went along with this and said you were there, though you had never been in the apartment?
I didn't think anything of it, but the threat to my family, the threat to her family.
Those threats would turn out to be the least of her problems. Coming up, a questionable investigation and prosecution.
Law enforcement did not follow the rules, but it gets worse.
Maria Palomino had been savagely murdered in her downstairs apartment. 15-year-old Jennifer Jeffley says she wasn't there when it happened. She was at a neighbor's apartment on the phone talking to family friend Craig Peters.
Just a basically regular, conversation.
But Jennifer says her friend and the upstairs neighbor of the victim, 24-year-old Eva Mondragon, allegedly wanted her to tell police something else, that they had been together at the time of the murder.
You told police you were with Eva Mondragon when the murder happened, but you really weren't?
No, ma'am. I was in a whole nother location.
Why did Eva want you to say you were with her?
She said our lives was in danger if we didn't say that we were together.
What did that mean? And were Eva and Jennifer going to give cops the same version of events? At the scene, Houston PD deduced Mrs. Palomino was hit over the head with a piece of pottery and stabbed multiple times with a knife from her own kitchen, a knife that seemed to be missing. They collect their evidence, take witness statements, then leave, only to return the next day for Jennifer.
The following morning, they came to my mother's apartment. They told my grandmother that they needed to take me back to the precinct to ask me additional questions. My grandmother asked if she ride with him. I still remember this. It was a 1996 4-door Ford Taurus, brand new because it still had the new car smell. But he told my grandmother there wasn't enough room in the car for her to ride with us. So my grandmother told him, okay, because we hadn't been in Houston that long, would you allow me to go and get my purse and my car keys and follow? He says yes. So as my grandmother turns around and walk up the sidewalk, he gets in the car and drives off.
Drives off with the 15-year-old. When Jennifer's mom, Jackie, gets home from work, she hears her youngest daughter is gone.
My mother told me that the detective had come and picked up Jennifer and taken her with him.
So she didn't know where Jennifer
She
was?
had no idea.
Did they ask for your permission to take your daughter?
Never.
At the station, Sergeant Wayman Allen and Detective Roy Swainson would be interviewing the 8th grader.
They tag teamed me. So after my initial arrival at the precinct, I was never alone. I never had time alone. One of them was always with me.
According to court documents, the interrogation of the minor was not video or audio taped.
Questions start. He's nice at first. So walk me through what happened. I reiterate the same story.
The story that she'd been with Eva at the time of the murder. Awakened by Mrs. Palomino's screams, they went outside to investigate. Then Jennifer, under the direction of Eva, went into the victim's apartment, rifling through 2 purses, looking for pen and paper in order to write down what she saw.
In my mind, I'm keeping my family safe.
But cops aren't buying it. They press further.
You say you went through the contents of these 2 purses looking for a pen and paper to write down what you had saw. Yes, sir. Okay, well, why is your fingerprints on the drawer of the murder weapon? I didn't have blood. You didn't touch the victim at any time. No, sir. You didn't check her for a pulse. No, sir. You're lying. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. I maintained the initial statement for maybe a few hours. Then, okay, well, obviously they know something that I said in this statement is not true. So that's when I started trying to tell them, okay, well, I was asked to make the statement. This is what really happened.
Next comes statement number 2. Jennifer tells cops while she and Eva were waiting for help to arrive, Eva told her to go over Mrs. Palomino's fence to check on her. Once in the apartment, Jennifer says she moved a piece of pottery from Mrs. Palomino's neck and picked up the victim's purse and put it on a chair. In this version, Jennifer admits to having gone into the kitchen to look for a pen, something she had forgotten to tell police before. Detectives aren't buying this version either.
You didn't think in your mind, I should have an attorney, I shouldn't be saying these things. You didn't even think of it.
I had never been in trouble with the law.
As Jennifer continues to talk to cops alone, Jackie is calling, trying desperately to get to her daughter.
I had called the detective because he left me his business card. I asked him, where's my daughter and where are you, so that I can either come and get her or so that I can be there with her. And he just said, it's not necessary. We're through questioning her and we'll be bringing her home in 30 minutes.
30 minutes comes and goes.
I gave him the benefit of the doubt because I didn't know where they were. I know how traffic is in Houston. 45 minutes later, I'm calling back, where are you? What's the problem? I just want to be there with her. And he says, we had another question or 2 to ask her, so we'll be there in 30 minutes. And that's what he kept doing. I gave him 30, 45 minutes to bring her home, and when he didn't, I would call him back. One point in time, he told me she's in good hands. We're taking good care of her.
Was she in good hands?
I had asked for, first, my grandmother. I asked for my mother. They told me, you don't need anybody. You're not in any trouble. We're just trying to get the facts correct, and then we'll take you home, because I was helping them. You keep helping us, and we'll help you. But I didn't have anything to tell them.
And yet Jennifer comes up with another version, version number 3. In this statement, the teen points the finger at Eva and a guy named Frank, then quickly admits the story isn't true. As the hours tick by, Jennifer says detectives never let up.
I never got a break from the questioning, being told that I had done it and just confessed. It never stopped until finally I signed a statement.
In a small downstairs apartment, 71-year-old Maria Palomino is found viciously murdered. At Houston PD, cops are questioning 15-year-old Jennifer Jeffley in connection with the crime. The 8th grader is alone, being interrogated without a parent or attorney present.
They told me, you don't need anybody. You're not in any trouble. We're just trying to get the facts correct, and then we'll take you home.
Jennifer has given cops a few different versions of events, but the truth, she says, is at the time of the murder, she was at neighbor Janet Dorsey's house, talking on the phone with family friend Craig Peters. Cops tell her they've got proof to the contrary.
They had evidence. They had my blood. They had my fingerprints.
But they really didn't have your fingerprints and no blood evidence.
I didn't know.
After almost 9 hours of questioning and with the alleged promise she'd get to go home, Jennifer gives her 4th and final statement. It would be considered her confession. Jennifer allegedly tells police she and 2 men, Ernest and Tim, had planned to steal Mrs. Palomino's car. That morning, the 3 of them jumped Palomino's fence and entered her apartment. Mrs. Palomino screamed and Ernest hit her over the head with a piece of pottery. After searching the apartment and going through 2 purses, Jennifer eventually found the car keys and gave them to Tim, while Ernest continued to assault Palomino. Jennifer says she was afraid Mrs. Palomino would be able to identify her, so she and Tim went into the kitchen, and following Tim's directive, she retrieved a knife from the kitchen drawer. Jennifer gave Tim the knife, who handed it to Ernest. Ernest stabbed Mrs. Palomino several times. Then Jennifer heard upstairs neighbor Eva Mondragon yell down, "Are you okay?" And Ernest, faking a woman's voice, answered back, "I'm okay, I just fell and hit my head." The 3 of them eventually left. Jennifer says she washed her hands because she saw blood on them from where she had touched the woman. Jennifer allegedly concludes by describing Ernest and Tim, what they drive, and where they hang out.
How did the statement come about? Did you write it?
No, it was typed by detectives. It was later signed by me. They told me once I signed the statement, I'd be able to go home. I was so tired and so depleted of energy, I would have signed whatever they put in front of me.
Not only did you not write it, you didn't read it.
No, ma'am.
What about the men who, according to that statement, killed her with you? Who are they?
I didn't even know those names.
After the statement is signed, the detective speaks with Jennifer's mom, Jackie.
He told me very rudely, she's not coming home.
The 8th grader is charged with capital murder.
So I felt like they just have her mixed up with somebody else because Jennifer is not a murderer.
Jennifer is taken before the magistrate, where her juvenile rights are read to her and an argument is made to keep the case in juvenile court. But the judge disagrees and rules that 15-year-old Jennifer should be tried as an adult, despite 17 being the legal age for an adult in Texas. She is then assigned a public defender who allegedly won't return Jennifer's calls, letters, or talk to her mother, Jackie.
The judge told him to contact his client, but he never did. He was completely ill-prepared. How can you have a defense if you don't even talk to your client?
1 year later, the case goes to trial.
On the day of a capital murder trial of a 15-year-old, that's when you meet the public defender?
That's when I met him.
Jackie believes Jennifer's attorney failed her in many ways, especially by not calling any alibi witnesses.
Who would have been her alibi as to where she was at the time of the murder?
She was talking to Craig Peterson on the phone, and she was at Janet's house during that time.
I was the last one to talk to her, and no one never got in touch with me.
Did the attorney pull the phone logs as far as phone records?
Not that I know of, no.
Jennifer Jeffley is found guilty of capital murder and sentenced to life, eligible for parole after 40 years.
How did you feel when you heard the words guilty?
Oh, wow, just the air is just knocked out of you. I mean, sad. I was mad, too.
Jennifer says there was one thing, and one thing only, which sealed her fate.
What forensic evidence did they have against you in court?
None.
What evidence did they use against you to convict you?
The statement that was typed by police.
Jennifer appeals her conviction, and for that appeal, the judge assigns Jennifer the same public defender.
She turns around and appoints him as her appeals attorney. Jennifer had no hope, none.
The appeal was denied. Then, years later, Jennifer's family tries again, this time hiring a new attorney, Rocket Rosen. The basis for his appeal? Ineffective assistance of counsel.
The lawyer that was appointed to represent Jennifer Jeffley failed miserably at his job. And I zoomed in on the one issue, the confession. He did not raise the issue to the trial judge to suppress her statements and confession. Her statements should have never come into evidence.
Rocket says because of this, it was easy for the jury to convict her.
The jury was tainted. They received illegal evidence. You were never getting past that statement. I was involved in a capital murder. Out of her own mouth. She had no shot.
The way the confession was acquired, was that illegal?
Absolutely, 100%. This young girl had the maturity level probably of a 13-year-old. For your child to go on a field trip, what do you have to do?
Sign consent.
Sign permission, sign consent. Now we're dealing with a young lady's life. Law enforcement knows this, and it's frustrating, and I'm sorry, I sound frustrated.
And she didn't have an attorney present.
It was all about a result. It was all about solving the crime.
And what happened to the two guys, Ernest and Tim, who allegedly helped kill Mrs. Palomino?
I think law enforcement knows other young gentlemen were involved.
And they've never been charged?
Never been charged.
Despite what seemed like overwhelming evidence, once again, Jennifer's appeal is denied.
Really, appellate court? You don't see this? You allow this?
Then a few years later, Jennifer receives a bombshell letter.
I get a letter from the Houston Crime Lab. The DNA in my case is not the DNA that belongs to my case.
And none of the blood evidence or the fingerprints are yours?
No, unknown parties.
No other parties have been charged or convicted?
No.
Just you?
Just me.
15-year-old you?
Yes, 15-year-old me.
So Jennifer is in prison. But whatever happened to upstairs neighbor and witness Eva Mondragon?
Where is Eva now?
I don't know.
Have you heard from her since you've been behind bars?
No.
Jennifer Jeffley has been in prison for the last 2 decades for the vicious murder of 71-year-old Maria Palomino, and Jennifer allegedly confessed.
They told me once I signed the statement I'd be able to go home.
She never went home again. Jennifer's former appeals attorney, Rocket Rosen, says that statement alone got her convicted.
If this confession had been suppressed, you feel she would not have spent the last 20 years in prison?
I believe that, yes, in my heart.
Jennifer says she's innocent and she has 2 alibis to prove it. But there's someone who says what she saw that day contradicts that. Eva Mondragon, remember her? Jennifer stayed at her house with 2 other boys the night before the murder, and Jennifer says it was Eva who told her what to say to detectives.
Why did Eva want you to say you were with her?
She said our lives was in danger.
Crime Watch Daily reached Eva Mondragon, who initially agreed to a sit-down interview, but then changed her mind, citing safety concerns. But in a phone interview with our producer, she says she remembers things went down very differently, starting off with a bombshell.
Eva told me that there is no way that Jennifer is not involved. She told me they were awakened by what sounded like screams and that Jennifer had left to make a phone call. Eva told me once outside, she saw a screen dangling, so she called out, "Are you okay?" because her neighbor was an elderly woman.
Eva claims it was Jennifer's voice she heard from the apartment saying, "I've just fallen and hit my head." Eva continues saying, "I ran off to the manager's office, and when I came back to our apartment, Jennifer was out there."
Eva told me, "I know what I saw. She had blood on her shirt, bruising on her arms, a cut on her hands, and fingerprints on her arm as though someone had been holding her arm at her bicep." Eva told me that Jennifer took off running towards her mother's apartment and that by the time she returned, cops were already there.
Eva then said her clothes had changed. She was telling me what I should say to police. I just looked at her. I said I wasn't going to lie for nobody. The 2 stories are radically different. Eva claims she heard Jennifer's voice coming from the victim's apartment at the time of the murder. She saw blood and bruises on Jennifer. Jennifer told her what to say to police. But remember, Jennifer says she was on the phone with Craig Peters at the time of the murder. She had no blood or bruises on her. Eva told her what to say to police.
Did you kill Miss Palomino?
No, I did not. I had just went through the murder of my oldest brother. I know what it's like to have somebody take something from you, to rob your family of a life. I couldn't do that. I'm not even capable of murder.
You had nothing to do with the crime?
No, I did not.
And still, the family has many unanswered questions.
Including, what did Eva tell police in her statements after the murder? Rocket Rosen told Crime Watch Daily the case file is sealed because Jennifer was a juvenile. But how could that be when she was tried as an adult?
And if in Jennifer's fourth statement, the one which got her convicted, she named Ernest and Tim as the accomplices, where are they and why weren't they charged and tried? Also, with no physical evidence linking Jennifer to the scene, whose unknown DNA did they find? And has that DNA since been put into the system to see if there are any hits?
It was really just like a done deal. Hey, we got the killer. Let's convict her and let's move on to the next one.
What pains you the most in all this?
They took her away and charged her with something that she didn't do. Her life was and has been
Robbed from her.
and from her family, from us.
Crime Watch Daily reached out to the Houston Police Department multiple times. They declined to comment. We also reached out to the Harris County District Attorney, Jennifer's public defender, retired Detective Swainson, and retired Sergeant Allen. They never returned our calls. In court documents, though, Sergeant Allen testified that at the time he was interrogating Jennifer, he did not consider her to be a suspect. He was merely trying to find out what happened and to fill in the gaps in the sequence of events.
Did the detectives make a mistake?
I don't believe that they made a mistake. I believe that they intentionally and knowingly took my life with malice and intent to appease the family or for a conviction rating, success rate.
What about the attorney?
He didn't do anything. He didn't fight for me. He had no passion for my life. He had no passion for my case.
Do you think that if you had been an affluent family, if you had had money, do you think this would have happened?
No, because one, I would have been able to afford an attorney that would have represented Jennifer completely. And two, because I would have been able to stand up to the detectives better then. But they got me at my weakest point because losing two boys, two sons, two children, so I couldn't really, I didn't have it in me to fight, so.
But you tried.
I tried. My hope is that she comes home before I pass away.
What do you need right now?
I need people to wonder why, to question why. I need people to demand answers.
Jennifer Jeffley won't be eligible for parole for another 20 years. She'll be 55.
What have you missed most?
What I miss most is my mom. I miss family. I miss being treated with dignity and respect. I've never been on a date. I've never had the opportunity to fall in love.
What do you have to say to your mother and your sisters?
I miss you. I love you. Mama, hang on, I'm coming. I'm coming.